I spy with my little eye an operative by the name of Vi.
How you get so big into food of this kind?
Hello and welcome in. Today we're going to do a spoiler-free review of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, Black Spire, a novel by Delilah S. Dawson. Her second novel, though one of many entries she's had into the Star Wars universe, also writing short stories, novellas, comics, all kinds of things. She's become something of a regular, which is great news. Like I said, spoiler-free review. We have already done our spoiler discussion on this on our streamcast, so if you want to click in the description or on the card, it will take you to that if you would rather hear our full conversation. But if you're here to kind of get a sense of the novel, to see if it's something you want to read, I'm not going to be ruining anything for you. This is one of two novels that were released to tie into Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. There was also A Crash of Fate by Zoraida Cordova, which we also have a spoiler review for and have a spoiler discussion for if you are interested in that. And basically the goal of this book is to help set up the atmosphere of the planet of Batuu and Black Spire Outpost as you would see at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. This book is an explanation of how does the Resistance and the First Order get into a conflict at Black Spire Outpost during the day that the park takes place in. As far as being a tie-in to Galaxy's Edge, I think the book does a really good job and is very successful. My favorite thing about this book is the same favorite thing I had about A Crash of Fate, which is I just love being on Batuu. I have fallen in love with the culture of Batuu, the people of Batuu. I like the way this book not only sets up the conflict that you see at the park, but it also gives you some backstories on some characters you see at the park, such as the character of Savi. If you know what goes on at the park, you know who he is as a character, but in the event you don't know that, I won't say anything because it is a spoiler for the novel. This book has a lot of adventure. It is part cultural lens, part thriller. There's also some action-adventure, Indiana Jones-like parts to the novel, which was really great, and you get a snapshot of a lot of different subcultures on the planet. You get to know more about Oga and the gangster side. You get to know more about the regular people in the market. You get to know more about the people who are on the outskirts of the outpost, living in kind of their own communities. And it, like I said, I love that atmosphere, knowing how, this kind of backwater world gets pulled into this greater conflict was a really valuable thing for me. As far as the characters in the novel, by and large, I enjoyed them. The new characters were all really fun. At first, they kind of seemed like, oh, it's this character type, it's this character type, it's this character type. But as you got to know them and have a more nuanced understanding of them, and then also see their character arcs, they came alive more so than just the stereotype, which I'm sure is something that is intentional and has a deeper meaning within. But I was really impressed that, partway through the book, we get this kind of crew, and then that they each kind of have their own story and their own arcs, and it was really well done. If you are familiar with the Phasma Novel, the other novel by Dawson, which is up here on my shelf, the character of Vi Moradi and the character of Captain Cardinal are both from that book, and the novel Phasma is one of my favorites in current canon. I could not recommend Phasma highly enough. I would say you don't need to read Phasma in order to understand Black Spire. If that's something you are worried about, Black Spire does tell you enough about the characters where you can kind of jump in. Obviously, reading Black Spire is going to spoil elements of Phasma for you, but if you want to read Black Spire first, you're going to be totally fine as an entry point. Returning is the character of Captain Cardinal. He now goes by the name Archex, and we get to see his journey leaving the First Order and figuring out who he is and who he wants to be, and that was a very compelling story. And then we get the character of Vi. Oddly enough, I loved absolutely everything about the book, but I struggled with some aspects of Vi's character. Now, it's not to the point that it's greatly upsetting. In fact, one of the best parts of the novel is the small parts. There's small character moments, and it's something that Dawson does so well. Taking characters that could be so out there as these space caricatures of what they're trying to be, and then giving them really human emotions and really human moments. And Vi certainly had those. In fact, Vi had some of my favorite lines in the whole book. Her character arc, without getting into specifics, I don't think it's finished. I was left at the end of the book wanting to see a little bit more development out of Vi than I got. However, Dawson has written 2 novels with this character. It's perfectly conceivable that she would get a third, even though it is not yet announced. So, to the extent that I'm left wanting a little bit more, I'm also keeping in mind that Vi's character is continued at Galaxy's Edge, and there's any number of ways that we could get the continuation of her character, and that I could still see the end of the character development that I was looking for. So, my only true negative, I would say, of the book is that I wanted a little bit more oomph from Vi that I did not get. However, I say that with the caveat that we might very well get that in the future, and I have every intent of being patient to see if that happens. It was enough for me to say that. I guess I mentioned the Phasma novel earlier. I'm a huge fan of the Phasma novel. I largely wanted out of this book a sequel, almost like a Phasma 2. It couldn't be a Phasma 2. I knew Captain Phasma was not going to be in the book. But reading it through the lens of, I wanted another novel like Phasma, this book was not going to do that for me, and that's my own fault, and that's just a matter of expectations, and so I say this for you more as a warning. Phasma as a novel is Star Wars Mad Max. It's a wild, crazy, dark, twisted tale. This book is more of a fun adventure, way more lighthearted. There's definitely some dark moments, and there's some very gruesome moments, if that is a thing that you might find upsetting. There's a very realistic descriptions of physical injury and violence that go on within the story. But while that is very intense and very specific, the story itself is very much a fun adventure. Like I said, kind of in a more Indiana Jones feel, where Phasma had more of a Mad Max feel. Because I was looking for that Phasma 2, I wasn't quite getting what I wanted. But this book was never promised to be a Phasma 2. That was just my hopes. I think Black Spire does exactly what it needs to do for the book it was trying to be. And if you read this through the lens of, I want to read a book about Black Spire Outpost, I think you're going to be happy. If you're like me and you were waiting for a follow-up to Phasma, tonally like Phasma, it's not that. It isn't. That doesn't make it bad. That just means it's not that. So just keep that in mind if you're reading this to follow up that book, that it might not be the book you're looking for. As I said, there were so many small moments. There was, even within the narration, just hearing stuff described post The Last Jedi. This book does take place the very beginning, during, and then the vast majority of the book after The Last Jedi, and it's so cool to be in that time span and hear things taking place in that time, read the words Supreme Leader Kylo Ren. All of that stuff was enjoyable. The new characters are great. Batuu is great. It's just kind of go into the book with the right frame of mind, and I think you'll be fine. And I hope there's a follow-up, because there's definitely more I want to see from this character. But that's what I got. Like I said, check out our long discussion if you want to hear more of what we had to say. If you're not already, please follow us on all the socials. Leave me a comment telling me what you thought of the book. And until next time, keep it real and fly casual.
Cooking can be fun.